So first off, we are going to hear from Megan Phillips, who's the manager of client onboarding at Workiva. Now, Megan has been there for 9.5 years, along with Jared Hayes, who will also be speaking. And Megan and Jared founded the original and first LGBTQ plus affinity group at Workiva back in the early 2017. Now, Megan is originally from Oklahoma and lives in Iowa with her wife, Ashley. In her spare time, she is a community board member for Re Inc., which is a gender neutral clothing company. Other than that, Megan is a huge soccer and softball fan, go OU, and loves to travel. Now, Jared Hayes, who is a lead customer success manager at Workiva, is also joining us today. Jared has been with the company for 8.5 years and has been fortunate enough to see the company culture evolve and mature. Now, like I said, he and Megan had established that first LGBTQ plus affinity group, and they have co-led it since then. Now, Jared also lived and taught English in Japan for 3 years prior to working for Workiva, and considers Japanese culture and language a big part of his life. For hobbies, he loves video games, outdoor volleyball, mountain hikes, and concerts. They're going to be joined in conversation with our own amazing Hunter Canning. Now, Hunter is a New York-based actor, puppeteer, producer, and photographer. A conscious citizen of the world, his ethos is bringing people together through all facets of life. Be it producing live performances downtown, creating corporate recruitment content, or photographing portraiture, red carpets, and live events, Hunter has a passion for bringing people together to foster growth, kindness, and a true understanding of each other. I'm very excited for this upcoming session, so I'm going to turn the floor over to Hunter, Megan, and Jared. Take it away, y'all.
Thank you so much, Meg. And hi, Jared and Megan. It's so wonderful to have you here. Thank you for being here. How are you?
Doing well.
Good. Ooh, I love your look. You got your Workiva swag shirt on today.
Like
very good. Ooh, that's fun. Very good.
Megan's got the newer one, I think. So.
Yeah. Sorry, can't see that.
Ooh, that's right. You have the dichotomy, the dark and the light. I love it. Yeah. Very good. Very good. So, I'd love to hear about, the LGBTQ IA plus group from Workiva that you both started. But before we jump in with questions and stuff like that, I'd love if you could share a little bit about yourselves. And I think you have maybe some slides you can pull up for us while we're doing that about you and about Workiva. Is that right?
Yeah, Workiva.
Awesome.
Yep. Let me go ahead and share my screen.
Fantastic.
It says it's disabled. I'm not sure is it something you can enable on that end?
Oh, womp womp. Well, here, let's, if someone can make us co-hosts in the background, that would be super helpful, starting especially with Jared, as Jared would be starting the screen. So, and now you're a co-host.
I got it.
Things Computer magic.
Poof.
There we go. Perfect.
Right. Can everyone see? Which screen do you see?
We see Rainbow Berg Business Employee Resource Group.
The right screen to see. My other screen's messy.
He's a little messy. It's all right.
So yeah, we're here to talk to you a little bit about our group, Rainbow Berg at Workiva. And Berg, if you didn't know, is Business Employee Resource Groups. Yeah, a lot of people hear ERG. I'm not sure how many people have heard Berg before, but yeah, we added the business part of that, and we'll kind of go through the naming change of that kind of in our history here. But just a little bit about who we are as a company. So Workiva is a cloud-based platform software service company. Started off with SEC reporting as kind of our bread and butter, but we've definitely grown into simplifying complex reporting around regulatory, financial, and ESG. ESG is kind of the new one that's coming up. We already have a lot of customers on that. So all those different solutions, we simplify complex reporting around that. So that's kind of who Workiva is, and just a little bit about our growth as a company. As far as our Rainbow Berg's mission statement, this is something that has also evolved over the years. Recently, we've gone through another change up, and we'll kind of talk through that. but our current statement is to build an inclusive and empowering organization that supports gender and sexual diversity within Workiva and our external communities. So we really wanted to emphasize the diversity there. We kind of, you'll notice the theme of our Berg over the years is to avoid the LGBTQ plus acronym. It's unavoidable in some situations, but we wanted to keep it broad within our mission statement. And also just emphasize that we're not only refocusing within Workiva, but externally as well. So I think you saw some of this or heard some of this earlier when we had that lovely introduction. Thank you very much for that. But yeah, currently live in Denver, originally from Iowa. Just outside of work stuff, definitely into video games, volleyball, hiking, getting some outdoor stuff, concerts, music, all that good stuff. And there's one of my favorite quotes. I really had to like sift through which one I wanted to pick out for that. But yeah, that's a little bit about me. Megan, if you want to introduce yourself.
Sure. So yeah, I will echo the sentiment. Thank you for the introduction to start off with. Currently living in Iowa, but originally from Oklahoma. It says Eldon there, but I usually tell people Tahlequah. So whichever you land on first on Google Maps is where you can decide. So yeah, my hobbies, I have a consistent hobby with reading. I like to consume all sorts of materials with reading, being a foodie. My wife is a chef. It's just a must. That's how it has to work out. And then I don't know if gifts and memes are hobbies, but if I had a choice and could communicate solely in that media, I certainly would. And yeah, my favorite quote, if life were predictable, it would cease to be life and be without flavor. I think, that's especially true with the last few years, definitely learning to kind of adapt and see what happens.
I love it.
Awesome. Well, thank you for the intro there, getting to know you a little bit. Could you tell us a bit about, Jared, you touched on too the Berg and, trying to broaden it from, the longer acronyms that we're familiar with. So could you speak about the evolution of, naming the group, also like the type of groups, we hear affinity group, we hear support group, there's so many different things, right? And so if you could kind of tell us about your journey with that and also how that lines up with the two of you being co-founders for the group.
Yeah, definitely. And that's a good segue kind of into our next slide here. So yeah, we started off, so we have the 2016 here that's when Affinity Groups started as a company. And we actually started off with a really funky name. It was WILA, and that stood for Workivians of different identities, orientations, and allies. And again, we kind of avoided going back to that theme. We avoided the LGBTQ plus. We wanted to keep it broad, but obviously WILA doesn't really roll off the tongue. So the acronym stood for what we wanted it to, but when referring to it, it just was, it was not fun. So we rebranded in 2018, and that's also when we moved away from Affinity Group to an employee resource group. Affinity groups, at least for us, everyone kind of starts off differently, but it was really just like hip chat discussion. There really wasn't much going on. We were making some changes internally as a company, but once we became an employee resource group, that definitely how we reached out, expanded more within the company. We started making changes within the company. So that's kind of the growth that we've gone through from Affinity Group to ERG. And that was, again, we decided on rainbow just because we thought it was like a word that made it very understandable and clear as to who it's representing without the LGBTQ plus. So we were that for quite some time. And just earlier this year, we're also going through some changes. You'll notice that we went from an ERG to a BERG, a Berg, and that's really adding the business component to it, because we wanted to also, the focus of the group is to also look externally as well, and add that business component to it, which we can kind of talk to a little bit later. But yeah, we debated on when we were creating our bergs, we wanted it to be very clear who it was representing. And so we thought about the LGBTQ plus for a while. But after having a meeting discussion on it and just talking with our group, we decided to keep that rainbow because everyone just felt a better connection to that. And so currently we stand at Rainbow Berg for Business Employee Resource Group. I do have another slide on like our kind of our greater path here.
Okay, great.
So Workiva was founded in 2008. And like I said, our Affinity group started in 2016, and we had a bunch of different ones. Like It Takes a Village for parents and caretakers, Edit, Ethnic Diversity in Tech for kind of our range of groups of people, pretty much by POC, BIPOC, Workivians. And then we formed WIOA 2017, and that's when we started forming D&I, which switched to ERGs, and then DE&I, and then we established Global Rainbow, and we started to connect with our global partners over in Amsterdam and London. So that was a big step for us as a company, taking that global step. And then moving to DEIB, the B is for belonging, adding that to our kind of the purpose of all these different groups is to really have belonging. But yeah, that's kind of where we are today.
Awesome. And what was it like for you to want to start this, as the co-founders? Where did that come from for y'all?
I think to start, it was really a question from our C-suite. They really wanted to emphasize on diversity. So it kind of met us halfway with, it was something that our company wanted to invest in. And as the questions came out, what kind of affinity groups could we have? What could we really establish? For Jared and I, it was just the obvious, we would like the LGBTQ plus community represented. So that's initially how it started. And then Jared and I just kind of placed ourselves in the position to start the planning, the discussion, and sort of building that initial structure around it.
Did y'all know each other before? Did this group bring you two together as like friends and compatriots on creating this?
Yeah, good question. We didn't really. So we have different offices all over the US, and I'm based in the Denver one. Megan's based in the Ames. So it kind of brought us together, actually. That's when we really got to know each other and started working together. And yeah, she's put up with me all these years. So I think we formed a good relationship.
That's awesome. I have a question. There's also this question that came in from one of our participants, and I think it's right online. So we're talking about the evolution of the name and how it changed. And someone asked, because I'm curious I love hearing about the evolution. And someone also asked, did the group's purpose or activities change when it became a Berg? I feel like it's right online with what we're talking about.
Yes, absolutely. As we started to incorporate the business component of it and the current evolution and structure we're placing on all of the Bergs across. So we are assigning pillars in different ways that each of us as leads can contribute to specific areas, and then it all kind of comes together. Changes in activities, one, being a part of a conference like this and kind of speaking to what we know in the process of building and evolving and scaling an employee resource group, getting involved from a more external component as well. So as we actually this week, we have the Denver Pride Parade where Workiva will be represented for the first time as a company entity in the parade. So it's kind of building more into that community and visibility and just stationing Workiva as an external partner.
Definitely. Yeah. Yeah, well, you can tell with the business thing, the Berg part is still new, so we're still ironing a lot of this stuff out, but we're essentially looking at OKRs and looking into where can we put money that would bring back to Workiva. So really investing in reaching out to like LGBTQ job fairs and like the Pride thing, definitely getting our name out there, showing where we stand as a company, that we are affirming, reaching more outward. That's kind of going back to our mission statement, that external community too. So.
So how's the process been with, so Workiva, I think you mentioned they approached you like, oh, we want to create something, and then they gave you the reins. And how has that process been when it's changed a lot? And it sounds like y'all have been bringing a lot to the table and having suggestions. So like, can you talk about from the inception of the idea and how the relationship is with the group and Workiva? Because it's two, but together, right?
Yeah, maybe we can jump to a different slide here to that, because I feel like some of this stuff's covered. I think looking at these are kind of, this is a good highlight of some of the things that we've done so far.
Oh, great.
And yeah, some of the Pride Month. So this is the stuff we've been focusing on this month. The new Pride marches there. But some of the things about bringing together, I think education's been a huge part of it. Having events like the trivia that brings people outside of our rainbow group are also creating these education pathways where we discuss LGBTQIA information like workplace stuff, pronouns, all that, all those education materials we post out to everyone at Workiva, and put it up on our education pathways. But yeah, usually a lot of our events too. So we've also been doing cross collaborative events where we bring in other burgs and have discussions there. So these two have been really of note, I think, are important to highlight. So we did one with veterans where we talked about don't ask, don't tell, and kind of went through like the policies within the military over the years. And I actually invited a friend who both identified as gay and was in the military, and he kind of talked through his experience, and then both groups came and shared their experiences. So that went really well. Then we also did a discussion with our formerly named EDIT, Ethnic Diversity and Tech, which is now under our Black, Hispanic, and Asian birds. But we discussed the movie Disclosure, which was a great one that talked about trans representation in the media. So that was a great coming together as well.
Oh, I love that. So speaking of coming together, and you have folks that are putting in a lot of time with this, we had a question that came in from our participant. Trung asks, how do you keep employee engagement and volunteers for the initiatives and the groups the group wants and has plans for? It seems to fall on the leaders of the group, probably talking about generally in other burgs and stuff. Has that been your experience? Like, how do you manage all that?
Yeah, that is a great question. For sure, that was part of the sort of growing pains in sort of building and kind of creating these spaces. For Jared and I, yeah, there was a ton on our shoulders. We kind of work in an environment where like end of quarter is super busy. And so we have to, really try to navigate the time management of that. But that's a really good tip. We send out surveys, we ask what everybody would like to see. We have open conversations about discussions, movies, books, anything that anybody wants to talk about, maybe suggestions on speakers, different things like that. And as well as now in the process of going through this scaling, we are adding those volunteers as part of the pillars as well. So if you can, at the beginning, it's a good thing to establish to get individuals who can help you with those sorts of things. For example, we've got individuals who are running meetings if we're not able to attend. but they are equipped to do so. We do have people who are helping, we have the Pride 5K today here in Ames, Iowa. And so we've got another individual volunteering who helped kind of set up the entire thing. So it's a great thing. It's just an open discussion to ask, what do you want to see? What do you want to talk about? What are things that are important to you? Considering the safe spaces as well as the brave spaces. But then also just, if you can early on, build that up underneath you, because that's going to make all the difference in the world. And you're not going to feel so overwhelmed.
Definitely. I would add to that, I think one of the biggest things was to start small. I think when you ask people to like, hey, do you want to be a lead of this burg? And everyone's like, oh, a lead, like how many hours of that is on my plate? I think what we started to do is like, okay, can you just help with this one event? Perfect. Do this one movie discussion. That's your thing. And having volunteers, like Megan said, for like individual events, that really helped us take stuff off our plate without scaring someone into like this a lot longer commitment than they were ready to take on. So
great.
Definitely a growing pain.
Yeah, and we'll get more too, I think, to some other growing pains and some trials and tribulations. But before we get there, and some learning experiences, right, that other people can learn from. But before we jump into that, are there would you like to speak to any of the long-term goals of the group that you have coming up, and maybe how that has changed and evolved?
Sure. I think that is actually our next slide.
Ta-da!
Yeah, so obviously there's a ton of bullet points here, so I'm not going to read verbatim, but these are just how we have in the first half of this year established the pillars and the roles and responsibilities. So at a high level, these are some of the goals that we want to look at. Obviously, we don't have a ton of metric-driven expectations around them yet. That is still to come with this, but from a community standpoint, participation in external events. So, like we got the Pride parades, things like that, building that kind of safety within the group itself, within the company, looking at the career pathways as well, seeing how we are reaching out into those, more diverse talent pools, being a part of networking events, a culture standpoint, really leveraging that education, bringing in speakers, trying to identify the best way to approach the group with the things that they would like to see. And then customer wise, doing things, like this, having open discussions about, how we're building things out. But then also kind of looking into some internal aspects of it as well. So one of a really big goal at some point, would be to get Workiva itself on the HRC index. That would definitely be something that we would want to really look at. But in the meantime, yeah, those things are still kind of being worked out. And as we continue to get through the process of this scale, we will definitely have those goals more solidified.
Awesome. So we were talking about earlier, you said there was a pitfall, Jared, that you had. And so maybe could you share some top tips for folks that want to start, resource groups, ERGs, burgs, affinity groups, where do they start? It's like, oh, there's all these names. Like, what do we even do? Like, I know I want to bring people together. I want representation. We have people here. There's room to grow. Like, but I don't know how to even get started. What do I do? Great.
Yeah. Kind of to our next slide here. I think the biggest thing is, we started with just like a hip chat, and that brought people together. That started coming up with, what do we want to do? What do we want to focus on? We brought that up to leadership slowly over time. What do we want to change as a company? Let's look at our internal documents. How can we improve those? And it just kind of grew from there. Setting up a group and a cadence for monthly meetings is a great start. Setting up leaders, start establishing those volunteers, and just start really thinking about what you want to do as a company. And I think the best way to think about it is I have this one here kind of in the middle, but take small digestible steps. I think that's really important, because if you overwhelm yourself with, oh, we need to do this by the end of the year. No, it's not going to happen. You're just going to stress yourself out and get overworked, and then, nothing will get done. So I think really just forming that solid community first, start establishing who's leads, spread out the work a little bit to volunteers, and just go from there. Start definitely connecting with leadership, involving managers into what you're doing. I involved my team manager right from the get-go. Hey, I'm starting this thing. This is now going to be something that's on my plate. And they've been very receptive to that, and even brought it up the chain. And so I think starting small like that is the best. That's kind of how we started, and it just evolved from there.
I love that. I love that. So we just have a minute left here. Thank you so much for making the time today. It's so great to hear about Workiva and what y'all are doing there, and the tips are really valuable. I think our listeners really, have learned, hopefully can pick up some of this. What's the best way to stay connected with y'all? Are y'all on LinkedIn? Is there places on Workiva, a place they can talk to Jared and to Megan? Like, how do we connect? How do we continue the conversation?
Definitely. Yeah. This is us. These are our LinkedIn profiles here. We can share these URLs later. Hunter, I don't know if we can give those to you or whatever after this, but yeah, this is just kind of what we look like when you look us up in LinkedIn. So definitely reach out to us, connect with us. We'd love to hear from you, and happy to help if you want to reach out.
That's great. Yeah. So thank you so much. So if you drop those in the chat, our magic folks working behind the scenes will relay that to our listeners. So Jared and Megan, thank you so much for making the time today. And I hope to see you back here at Power to Fly. We'd love to have you back.
Yeah. Thanks for this opportunity. It's been great. I really appreciate it. So
thank you so much for having us. Appreciate it.
Yeah.